Good morning. Shawnee in Mountain's garage. It's wicked early, and I'm up on a ladder in front of the 72 Nova. Because today, we're going to build the T4 Manifold crossover for a single turbo. I'm using the 72 as a dummy, because if it fits this platform, it'll definitely fit most GM cars of this era, and probably about anything you want to swap it into. So I'm just going to make it fit the Nova and go from there. So to refresh your memory, this is a cast T4 turbo log manifold. Supposed to be a copy of a Fowler Performance. He might have even done them and sold them for a while. It's $287 on eBay right now. Not a bad piece, and it does fit my Nova. The manifold is machined for a 2.25 V-band, and I had a matching stub that I got bolted on. So to get going, I've marked the ears of my transmission, and I got to cut those off. That's just my dummy mock-up transmission. And I know the transmission going in this car, I'm going to cut off. You could go out around, but most of the people cut them off anyway, so I'm just going to whack them off and build the pipe accordingly. Same story over here on the driver's side. I'm going to lop that ear off. I have a Silverado Manifold mocked up in there, and I've tried several versions of the stock downpipe, and it just gets too close to my frame and probably anything I'd want to put it in. So I've marked what's pretty much straight coming off there in yellow. I'm going to cut that off and V-band this end as well. I'm also going to remove the heat shield. It already has a broken bolt anyway. And I'll cut off the bosses that the bolts usually go into and clean up the manifold so it's not quite so ugly. A little paint, it'll be okay. My raw material is a bunch of stainless 2 3/8 OD bends that I bought to build a set of headers quite a few years ago. And of course I saved the scrap, it comes in handy. And this fits the V-band that's already on the cast manifold perfectly. The only V-band I have for the driver's side manifold is a 2.5, so I'm going to have to expand slightly, like the width of the pipe, not very much, to fit in the little groove. As usual, I took off the nylock and put a regular metric nut on, just so I don't melt it when I'm welding. I'll put the nylock back on afterwards. And it's an interlocking type, male and female. I like to put the female on the manifold. That way the male piece that's actually sticking out would be on my pipe that's loose if I needed to modify it because it wouldn't fit for some reason. The female side will take a flat V-band. V-bands come either flat or the interlocking style. And if you want to interchange them, the female side is flat, so you could do that if you had to, if you're changing things down the road. And the 2.5 V-band should fit on my truck manifold pretty good. Let's find out. I got halfway through the transmission ear, and I was getting tired of holding the saw up over my head. So I slapped in a new blade, and it cuts faster than you can hardly control it. Same thing over here. So if you're mad at yourself, use an old blade. If you're in a good mood, slap a new one in it. And the old trusty cordless one-handed hacksaw. Now if you were doing a job in your truck and you had to remove this heat shield and you picked up the impact, you'd probably break all the bolts off. And of course in this case they all come out, and the one that was missing was just missing, not broken. So interestingly enough, it's a nice manifold. Now the stock truck manifolds have been used many times, and you can make well north of 1,000 horsepower on an LS turbo setup using the stock manifolds. This is a pretty big manifold. I showed you before I was kind of picky. This is a good fat one. The opening's still only 2 1/8. You can make 1,000 horsepower or more. Unbelievable. I cut most of the way through the manifold with my cordless hacksaw, and I went to change the battery, and I decided to sit it outside to cool for a minute. I try to be nice to it, not burn the brushes up, because I don't have the cool fuel version yet. But I would replace it with one in a heartbeat. So I grabbed this random hacksaw, not even a new blade, and this thing is cutting like butter. So I've been following my yellow line, that I know is pretty straight in the car, I hope. Let's see what it looks like when I finish lopping her off. That worked pretty well. It was a good guess. I picked a nice round spot. And the V-band is going to fit on pretty nice. So I went ahead and cut off 2 bosses down where the V-band's going to be, those things, and beveled it so I can get a good weld in there. And I chose to cut off the bolt bosses across here. And on number 3, the way it's made, this one's made anyway, you get into the port a little bit, so I'm going to grind it down like the rest of them and then weld it up. No big deal at all. Again, this is a colossal waste of time actually cutting the bosses off, but I think in the end it looks better, if it matters. That's looking a little better. I'm going to have to go ahead and say I had a casting flaw because, I don't know if you can see it, I had to weld, there was a hole, I had a pocket I had to weld. The other ones have a little round thing. You can see it there, there, and there, which would have been in the casting process, and I'm thinking they missed this one because I had a hole. So in the final prep on the manifold, I'll die grind that smooth, but it's not sticking up. I'll blend her in, but she's pretty good over here, and I went ahead and tacked on the V-band, ready to jam it back on the car. On a scale to 1 to 10, that's about 18% sexier than it was before. Let's work on a crossover pipe. All right, we're starting to get somewhere. I expanded the very end of it to match the 2.5 V-band, because the pipe's only 2 3/8. Made the corner, I'm looking pretty straight this way. Trying to stay above the line of the pan. I think I'm gonna make it. I don't want to hang below the pan, because lowrider. And I think I should have plenty of room. The converter, a small converter, even a regular size one, doesn't hang out of the cover that much. So I think I'm good. If I stay on the line of the tranny pan, disregard the truck oil pan. I actually have another pan coming for this car that might fit. But the crossover pipe, no matter where I put the motor, will not be affected. I had 2 straights and 2 curved left over from the twin turbo Mani. And they're flat and they match the turbo log manifold. So trying them on, this one's too straight for what I have going on. And this one has too much of a curve, but I can take some curve out. I think it's going to work. So counting 1, that'll be the other side. Maybe 4 pieces in the whole job. We'll see. It's another day. I thought about it overnight. So I came out this morning, stuck a stock torque converter in the Turbo 400 to get a better visual, and determined that I didn't like this. It was probably going to run into the bulge in the converter or just be too close. So I started working on this side, and I'm closer, but now the crossover pipe would be too close to the pan and the pan bolts. I'm trying to stay in the plane of the pan and the frame rail, but you can't have things too close either, so I'll work on it a little more. Well, I added another piece of scrap, so I have more welding to do, and I stuck in this piece of 2.5 because 2 3/8 slides inside 2.5, and to be honest, I'm probably going to weld it right up right there. It actually gave me a little more adjustability. I can now get to my pan bolts. All in all, it's not perfect. But this is 2 cast manifolds into a $150 turbo. I could have used regular pipe if I wanted to. I do see a lot of people putting a wastegate right here, and I guess if it was big enough, maybe it would control boost. I don't know. I'm still researching that, or I'll drill a hole in the manifold when the time comes. But this whole setup is for the GT45, and it's okay. So I've been shopping online for a dual argon regulator. So when I build the T6 manifold, which I have all stainless stuff for, both sides, that I could try back purging. I'm either going to waste a lot of argon or it's going to be fantastic. I'm not sure. So the crossover pipe I just built, I'm going to go ahead today and weld both sides. I'm only this far down from the manifold on both sides with the 3 little connections I have. And unpurged, the worry is going to be sugar, they call it, or some material that might break off and go through the turbo or whatever. As far as I'm concerned, if you're doing headers and stuff, anything that's headed downstream and you're not working for NASA, a lot of people don't purge. I've never purged, but I've never built a lot of turbo stuff that required it. So I'd like to try it, and if it actually makes the whole welding experience with stainless better, that'd be awesome. Anytime I find myself sitting around worrying about what might break loose and go through the turbo, I think about a tractor trailer with a giant cast iron manifold, and if that sits around for any length of time, it's full of soot and rust, and it's pretty common when you start it up, you fire a bunch of stuff through the turbo and out through the pipe, and that thing goes a million miles on pretty much that BorgWarner S475. I think that belongs on a Series 60 Detroit diesel, so I think it'll take it if it was to have an event in a car with an LS motor on gas. I don't know. Like I say, I hope it enhances the whole stainless welding experience, because it's not much fun. I don't excel at thin stuff or aluminum, but I'm working on it. You gotta, you're not good at everything, but you gotta keep on trying. It would be a whole lot easier to just pick up the MIG weld and MIG weld that whole thing, but that doesn't teach me anything. So I will fight through it and live with the results. I'll get better every time. I've been studying at night a lot of TIG welding stuff, and I already found what I've been learning about puddle control, etc. is, I was already good on thick stuff. You want to make a bunch of brackets for the bench here, boy, it comes out fantastic, has nice colors and stuff like that. I know I overheat thin stuff. Sometimes I burn holes even. So I keep turning down the amperage, trying to work on puddle control, torch control, stuff like that. So it's all a learning curve. It's all you can do. But that's going to wrap up this one. So we built the T4 crossover in a mix of cast iron, some 309 stainless, some 409 stainless. Oh, back to the 409. That piece of 2.5 I stuck between the bends with a pipe back to the 2 3/8 slides inside. If I weld that around there, there's no way anything's getting on the inside. I'm not going through two thicknesses of pipe. That's actually a butt joint. It's not correct, but it won't affect a thing. If you've been watching a lot of the dyno videos lately, man, you can run 10 or 12 feet of pipe and lose 3 horsepower. It's not going to bother this thing, LS turbo or any turbo setup. A little turbulence in the pipe, it's not going to hurt a thing. So next time, I don't know what we're going to do. I got to get back on the 71 Nova, at least finish up all the loose ends I have before I start making more loose ends. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.